Program Manager for the California Opioid Safety Network at the Center for Health Leadership and Practice, a program of the Public Health Institute. You are about to watch a quick take video that has been condensed from its original format to present examples for developing a process and structure to coalition work. The subject matter expert for this webinar is Karya Lustig, Deputy Director for the Center for Health Leadership and Practice at the Public Health Institute. Let's get started.
People like to be a part of things that have structure and process. It's hard to go to a meeting where it's not clear what's happening, what their role is, what they're supposed to be doing. Some people think, especially in small groups, oh my God, I don't want to go to that meeting because if I go, they're going to make me do everything because there's no one there. Or sort of if you're involved all in or not at all. Or I'm not even sure what I'm supposed to do, so why should I come? People want to come to things where they feel like it's clear what they're supposed to do or what their role might be, and being able to explain that ahead of time helps, but also just in the way that the meetings are structured. A real backbone to it is having a structure and then also having decision-making specificities. So to start with the structure, you need to have it clear if everyone's an equal player around one table, and you decide does everyone have the same kind of quote-unquote sort of power or authority within the group when they come to the table. Sometimes people have more like a wheel, which is the right-hand one, so you might have subgroups. People might have a few work groups jetting off from a wheel, and they do pieces of work and report back to a whole. That gives people a smaller workspace, I guess is how I would define it, around a specific area of work, and then maybe one person from that group report back to the whole. So not every person that's involved in the coalition is involved at that central wheel. There's a core group of people helping run things, and then there's this larger group that's involved in various work groups. Many of the coalitions that are larger or more established for a longer period of time that we have with the network use that, the kind of wheel concept with work groups. They found that to work really well for them. Many of the other coalitions that we work with as well nationally at the center here do that as well. In our smaller communities, though, people tend to not do that as much unless they're connected to a larger coalition that's more broadly defined. So they might have a large wheel in the middle because it's about community wellness in their county, for instance. And then each of the work groups might be a different issue. So you might have one about opioids, you might have one about childhood obesity, and then they report back to the central community wellness hub. No right or wrong way to do it, but it's just important to have some sort of structure that you could actually define so that people know, again, what they're joining and what the structure is. And you don't have to keep the same structure all the time, but if you change it, then everyone needs to be aware of that and kind of buying into what that is. Well, let's move to the decision-making one, because it is really important to have a decision-making process. This is an area similar to vision, where people just kind of think that they're doing it and that everyone's agreed to a process, and it doesn't usually become a problem until it's a problem. And usually those problems come about because of a really difficult topic that happened at a smaller meeting that could derail decisions about something because that person's becoming very vocal about it, but there's actually no process for how you would decide if that topic should be included or not included. And then it becomes an even more alarming issue because there's no way to manage it. This happens usually because people, they come around the table, they have an issue, they all think it's important. Again, they don't have the clear vision or purpose. They all just think that they're there for the same reasons. Every time a topic comes up, everyone kind of says, yeah, that sounds perfect, and then they move on, and no one seems to disagree, but they haven't actually voted ever or had any decision-making, and it's not clear even who's making the decisions. And then all of a sudden something big comes up, and there's, again, no way to manage it. Highly recommend taking a step back with whoever's at the table to decide how you make decisions. It also relates a lot to how you facilitate. You need to have a clear process for how decisions are made. So it could be unilateral, which might not be the best for a coalition, but some people do that. It could be consultative, meaning that you might have one person that is actually making the decision for whatever structural reasons needs to happen, but they consult heavily with the coalition. And the coalition needs to know that we're not making the decision, but we're voting on what we think is most important. And then this other authority figure is making the decision. That could also relate to the work group structure. They consult and provide consultative advice based on their expertise, and then it goes back to the core group who makes the actual decision. Some people use a democratic or majority vote. This would mean standard democratic process where everyone raises their hand. A really common one for coalitions that people try and do is this next one, the fourth one there, which is the unanimous vote, which is really hard to pull off, but people do it with a thing called gradients of agreement. This takes time sometimes, but it's very effective for collaborative processes because everyone gets their voice heard, which makes people want to keep coming back, of course. The problem with any of the above items is you might turn people off, those first three, because they think that their opinion is not being heard if they're not part of that group or person that's making the decision. And again, you might not know that because if you don't have a real process structured, no one's going to say anything when they have an issue unless a really big issue happens. So the gradients of agreement have people vote, but they're doing it over a process. So the first thing you're doing is checking people's level of agreement with whatever the vote is. So people usually use a finger process. So 5 fingers would mean I'm all in, totally get it, everything's great. So you're looking for 5s for the most part, but there's frequently not all 5s. So a 4 would be that they're fine with it, maybe not as gung-ho as the 5s, but they're fine. A 3 would be they're kind of neutral, but have some things that could be worked on, but they're okay with moving ahead. A 2 and a 1 would be where you want to pay attention heavily. So a 2 would be they're not okay with moving forward, and they have some things that they want to work on. And a 1 would mean that they have some serious issues with it that need to be completely reworked before they'll agree to it. So what this allows you is the space to have a conversation, and it's offered within the context of a conversational way of making the decision. So anyone who has the 2 or the 1 or maybe the 3 would then have the ability to describe what it is they have an issue with, and then it would go back to conversation. So it wouldn't be that it moves forward. It would mean that you're looking for everybody to be in agreement, so you're going to keep coming back to their level of agreement in order to make a decision, or you're going to table the conversation completely and not make one yet because you're not ready to. So you would keep circling back as you rework whatever the issue is that needs to be reworked. And again, the 1 would be a complete rework, and the 2 would be that they have some maybe specific part of it, and then that they would be fine. This works very successfully with groups. I've used it many times with groups, and I've heard back from other people where I've taught this that it works really well. Again, it's a more inclusive process. Even though it takes more time, people really feel good about it because they all get to be a part of it and they feel like they're really being heard. And then the last one here is delegation. Sometimes the people in the room are not the right people to make the decision. So you might delegate it to someone else who is the right person to make it, and you're sort of all agreeing that you're not the right sort of body of people or persons to make that decision, so you're passing it off.